Analyst, Democratic strategist Basil Smikle, and Republican strategist Susan Del Percio. Basil, what's on the line for Democrats today, and which race do you think of as the bellwether?
Is going to be a lot closer than the Virginia race, but I actually
because of the candidates.
I think it's partly because
of the voters,
partly because of the candidates, partly because of the state. Because I actually think New Jersey's becoming a bit more purple, but I also think that with Virginia, as was mentioned earlier, you have a lot of voters who are directly affected by the shutdown and the goings on in Washington D.C. So I think a lot of those votes are a referendum on that very specific issue. But the New York race I look at, because as a born and raised New Yorker, this race between Mamdani, Cuomo, and Sliwa, so the first question, what's on the line? I think it is this question of not only how Democrats are going to fight back against Donald Trump, but what is the future of the party going to look like? And it's really important. I do think that the Jersey race...
Okay, so you know how Trump always talks about loyalty? Like how he demands it from everyone around him? Well, guess what just happened? The one guy who knew literally everything about Trump's money, the guy who protected him through scandal after scandal for decades, just walked into a courtroom and blew up Trump's entire world on live television. Yeah, live TV. And Trump's face when it happened? Absolutely priceless. I'm talking about Alan Weisselberg. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, let me catch you up real quick. This guy wasn't just some random employee. He was Trump's chief financial officer. He ran the Trump organization's money for like 40 years or something. This man knew where every dollar came from and where every dollar went. He knew the secrets, all of them. And for decades, he kept his mouth shut, protected Trump through everything. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
I do think, to Susan's point, a lot of the younger voters want change. They're not necessarily connected to the, quote, Democratic establishment, not to the Democratic machines or the clubs. And they see the aging of the Democratic Party, and they want somebody that's just younger and more representative of their interests. I also wonder what a lot of older Latino and Black voters, particularly Caribbean and African immigrants.
Until October 23rd, 2025, that's when everything changed. Because on that day, Weisselberg sat down in a witness chair, put his hand on a Bible, and started talking. And what he said, oh man, what he said basically confirmed everything prosecutors have been claiming for years. Financial fraud, manipulated records, all of it, on camera, with the whole country watching. And here's the thing that makes this absolutely wild. This wasn't some enemy of Trump's. This wasn't a political opponent or some random hater. This was his guy, his most trusted business partner. The person who literally handled his money since before most of us were even born. And now he's saying he's done protecting Trump, done sticking to what he called the old playbook, just done. Can you believe this? Like, the timing alone is insane. We're talking days before crucial political moments. Trump's already dealing with 1 million legal battles. His approval numbers are struggling. And then boom, his own CFO turns on him. Live on television. Legal experts are calling this the biggest defection since Michael Cohen. Remember him? Trump's former lawyer who flipped and testified against him? Yeah, that caused a massive mess for Trump. Well, apparently this is even bigger, because Weisselberg wasn't just Trump's lawyer. He was the money guy. He knows things Cohen never knew. Financial things, paper trail things, the kind of stuff that prosecutors dream about. And the media? Oh, the media went absolutely nuts. Every major news outlet covered it. Social media exploded. Everyone was talking about Trump's reaction, which, by the way, they caught on camera. And let's just say, he did not look happy at all. Shock doesn't even begin to cover it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break down exactly what happened in that courtroom. We're going to talk about what Weisselberg actually said. We're going to look at why this matters so much right now, like why the timing of this is absolutely devastating for Trump. And we're going to connect the dots between this betrayal and the bigger pattern of people around Trump turning on him. Because here's the thing nobody's really talking about. This isn't just about one guy flipping. This is about Trump's entire brand. His whole identity is built on loyalty, right? He demands it. He expects it. He punishes people who don't show it. But what happens when the most loyal person in his inner circle, the guy who stood by him longer than almost anyone, what happens when that guy says enough is enough? That's what we're witnessing. And it's happening at literally the worst possible time for Trump. The courtroom drama, the live testimony, the financial details, the betrayal, the timing, all of it adds up to what might be one of the most damaging moments of Trump's entire career. And we're going to go through every single piece of it. But first, let me tell you why Weisselberg flipping is different from anyone else who's turned on Trump before. Because understanding why this particular betrayal cut so deep, that's the key to understanding why this whole situation is such a massive deal. This isn't just legal trouble. This isn't just bad press. This is Trump's fortress cracking from the inside. And once you see how deep this goes, once you understand what Weisselberg knows and what he's now willing to talk about, you'll realize why Trump looks so shocked, why his team is scrambling, and why this testimony could change everything. So stick with me here, because what happened in that courtroom is bigger than most people realize, way bigger. And think about this for a second. Trump's whole thing, his entire persona, is built on the idea that he's untouchable, that he's the guy who always wins, the guy who never backs down, the guy whose people stay loyal no matter what. That's the Trump brand. That's what his supporters love about him. But when your most loyal guy, the one who's been there longer than anyone, when he walks away and tells the world you're a fraud, that doesn't just hurt legally. That destroys the image. That breaks the illusion. And for someone like Trump, whose power comes from perception, from that aura of invincibility, this might be the most dangerous thing that could happen. So yeah, we're about to dive deep into this story. And trust me, by the time we're done, you're going to understand exactly why this testimony is sending shockwaves through Trump's world. Why his legal team is panicking. And why this might just be the beginning of something much, much bigger. All right, so let's get into who Alan Weisselberg actually is. Because if you're going to understand why this is such a nuclear bomb for Trump, you got to understand the relationship these two had. Weisselberg joined the Trump organization back in the 1970s. Let me say that again, the 1970s. This guy has been handling Trump's money for like almost 50 years. He worked for Trump's father first, then moved over to Donald when he took control of the business. So we're talking about someone who's been embedded in the Trump empire since the very beginning. This isn't some recent hire. This isn't a political appointee who showed up during the presidency. This is a lifer, old school, the kind of employee who knows where all the bodies are buried, so to speak. And here's what makes Weisselberg so valuable as a witness. He wasn't just keeping Trump's books. He was involved in everything. Real estate deals, tax filings, property valuations, executive compensation, all the financial stuff that makes or breaks a business empire. If there was a number on a document with Trump's name on it, Weisselberg probably saw it, probably signed off on it, maybe even helped create it. For years, prosecutors have been trying to get to Trump through his finances. They've been looking at his tax returns, his business dealings, his property values, all of it. But without someone on the inside willing to talk, it's really hard to prove fraud. You can have suspicions, you can see things that look fishy, but without someone saying, yeah, we did that on purpose, it's tough to make a case stick. That's why Weisselberg flipping is such a massive deal. Because now prosecutors don't have to guess. They don't have to rely on outside analysis or expert opinions. They have the actual CFO, the guy who ran the numbers, saying out loud, yes, we manipulated these financial records. That's huge. That's the kind of testimony that wins cases. And let me tell you what he actually said in court, because the details here are wild. Weisselberg testified that the Trump organization deliberately inflated property values when they needed to impress lenders or investors. But then they turn around and deflate those same property values when it came time to pay taxes. So like you'd have one building worth $10 million when Trump wanted a loan, but suddenly it's only worth $5 million when the tax assessor comes around. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, wait, isn't that just regular business stuff? No, it's not. That's fraud, like actual financial fraud. You can't just change the value of your property depending on who's asking. The number is supposed to be the number. But according to Weisselberg's testimony, this wasn't accidental. This wasn't sloppy bookkeeping. This was deliberate, strategic. They knew what they were doing. And Weisselberg admitted to being part of it. He said he helped prepare documents that he knew contained false information. He said he was aware that the valuations were manipulated. And then, and this is the kicker, he said he did it because that's what Trump wanted. Come on. Can you believe this? The guy who protected Trump for literally decades is now on a witness stand saying, yeah, we committed fraud and Trump was behind it. Legal analysts are losing their minds over this. Because remember, prosecutors have been trying to nail Trump on financial crimes for years. But Trump's whole defense has always been, I trusted my accountants. I trusted my CFO. If there were errors, I didn't know about them. Plausible deniability, right? Well, that defense just got a lot harder to use because now his CFO is saying the manipulation was intentional, that Trump knew, that it came from the top. This is the kind of testimony that prosecutors dream about. It's direct, it's specific, And it's coming from someone who was actually in the room when decisions were made. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Why did Weisselberg flip? Because for years, decades actually, he's been loyal. Through investigations, through lawsuits, through media scrutiny, he kept quiet. So what changed? Well, according to reports, Weisselberg was facing serious prison time. We're talking years behind bars. And at his age, I mean the guy's in his 70s, that's basically a life sentence. So prosecutors made him an offer. Testify against Trump. Give us the details we need, and we'll reduce your sentence. Maybe you do a few months instead of a few years. And apparently Weisselberg decided that protecting Trump wasn't worth spending the rest of his life in prison. Now Trump's team is obviously trying to spin this. They're saying Weisselberg was pressured, that he's lying to save himself, that the prosecution coerced him into false testimony. You know, the usual defense playbook. But here's the problem with that argument. Weisselberg brought receipts. He didn't just say, yeah, we did fraud. He brought documents, financial records, spreadsheets, email chains, the kind of evidence that backs up what he's saying. So it's not just his word against Trump's anymore. It's his word plus a mountain of documents against Trump's denials. And the timing? Oh man, the timing makes this so much worse for Trump because this testimony happened on October 23rd. Trump's already dealing with low approval ratings. He's already fighting multiple legal battles. His base is already feeling uncertain. And then this happens. Imagine you're a Trump supporter. You've defended him through everything. You've said the investigations are witch hunts. You've claimed it's all political persecution. And then his own CFO, the guy who worked with him for almost 50 years, gets on national television and confirms that, yeah, actually the prosecutors were right all along. That's gotta shake your faith a little bit, right? Like even if you want to believe Trump is innocent, even if you think the system is rigged against him, having his most trusted insider flip and confirm the accusations, that's hard to ignore. And the media coverage has been absolutely relentless. Every news channel is running the clips of Weisselberg testifying. Social media is full of reaction videos and hot takes. Political commentators are calling this a turning point. Some are even comparing it to Watergate, when Nixon's own people started turning on him. Now, I'm not saying this is exactly like Watergate, but the parallel is there. When the people closest to you start telling the truth about what you did, that's when things get really dangerous. And for Trump, this is dangerous because Weisselberg isn't the only one who might flip. He's just the biggest name so far. But if other Trump Organization employees see Weisselberg getting a reduced sentence for cooperating, what's stopping them from doing the same thing? If more people come forward with more evidence, Trump's legal situation goes from bad to catastrophic. Plus, there's the political damage. Forget the legal stuff for a second. Just think about the optics. Trump's entire brand is built on strength, right? He's the tough guy who doesn't back down, the winner, the deal maker, the guy who's always in control. But watching his most loyal employee betray him on live TV, that doesn't look strong. That looks weak. That looks like someone who's losing control. And for Trump's image, for the way his supporters see him, that might be even more damaging than the legal consequences. Because Trump voters don't just vote for policies, they vote for the persona, the strength, the confidence, the idea that Trump is untouchable. But if his own people are turning on him, if the fortress is cracking, that persona starts to crumble. And once that happens, it's really hard to rebuild it. Think about all the times Trump has survived scandals that would have destroyed other politicians. The Access Hollywood tape, multiple impeachments, January 6th, classified documents. He's weathered all of it. And you know why? Because his base believes in him. They believe he's fighting for them. They believe the attacks are unfair. But this is different. This isn't an attack from outside. This is someone from inside his own operation saying, yeah, he did it. That changes the calculation. That makes it harder to dismiss as political persecution. And here's another thing. Weisselberg isn't some disgruntled employee who got fired and wants revenge. He worked with Trump for decades. He made good money. He was trusted with everything. So when someone like that turns, when someone with that much history decides to cooperate, it sends a message. The message is this. Even the people who benefited from Trump's empire, even the people who were part of the inner circle, they're not willing to go down with the ship. They're saving themselves. And if that's happening at the top level with someone as connected as Weisselberg, imagine what's happening further down the chain. Okay, so let's break this down into the key points you need to understand, because there's a lot happening here, and it all connects to a bigger pattern. Point number 1. This isn't just about Alan Weisselberg. It's about a pattern of people around Trump deciding that loyalty isn't worth the cost anymore. Think about it. Michael Cohen flipped. He testified against Trump, gave prosecutors all kinds of information about hush money payments and campaign finance violations. That was huge. Then you had other Trump associates cooperating with investigations, people from his business administration. One by one, they've been making deals and telling what they know. And now Weisselberg, the guy who knew Trump longer than almost anyone, the guy who had access to the financial records that Trump kept hidden from everyone else, he's the latest domino to fall. So what does that tell you? It tells you that when people have to choose between protecting Trump and protecting themselves, more and more of them are choosing themselves, and that should worry Trump a lot. Because if the people who know him best aren't willing to go down with him, what does that say about their faith in his innocence? It says they know he's guilty, they know what happened, and they're not willing to lie under oath to protect him anymore. Point number 2. The legal implications here are massive, like potentially case-changing massive. Prosecutors have been building financial fraud cases against Trump for years, but without insider testimony, it's mostly circumstantial. You can show that property values changed. You can demonstrate that tax filings didn't match loan applications. But proving intent, proving that Trump knew what was happening and ordered it, that's way harder. Weisselberg changes that because he's not an outsider analyzing documents. He's the guy who prepared the documents. He was in the meetings. He heard the conversations. He knows what Trump said and what Trump wanted. That's the difference between a weak case and a strong case. That's the difference between Trump maybe skating by on plausible deniability and Trump actually facing serious consequences. And here's what really matters. If Weisselberg's testimony leads to a conviction, if Trump actually gets found guilty of financial fraud, that opens the door to all kinds of other problems. Civil lawsuits, more criminal investigations, asset seizures, the whole 9 yards. Because once you prove fraud in one area, suddenly everything else comes under scrutiny. Every business deal, every property transaction, every tax return, it all becomes fair game. So yeah, this testimony isn't just about one case. It's potentially the first domino in a much longer chain. And let's talk about what kinds of penalties Trump could be facing, because we're not talking about a slap on the wrist here. Financial fraud at this level with this much money involved can lead to massive fines. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe more. Plus, there's the possibility of being barred from doing business in certain states. New York, where a lot of this allegedly happened, could ban Trump from operating businesses there. That would be devastating for someone whose empire is built on New York real estate. And then there's the criminal side. Now, Trump hasn't been criminally charged based on this testimony yet, but if prosecutors decide they have enough evidence, if they think they can make a criminal case stick, he could be looking at actual prison time. Yeah, prison for a former president. Can you imagine? I mean, we've never seen anything like that in American history, but we've also never seen a former president with this many legal problems piling up all at once. Point number 3. The political fallout from this is already happening, and it's going to get worse. Trump's approval ratings were already struggling before this happened. Polls showed him losing ground with independent voters. Even some Republicans were getting nervous about his legal troubles, but most of his base was still solid, still believing that the investigations were politically motivated, still trusting that Trump was the victim of a witch hunt. Weisselberg's testimony makes that narrative a lot harder to maintain, because you can dismiss outside critics. You can say the prosecutors are biased. You can claim the media is lying. But when your own CFO, the guy you trusted with your money for almost 50 years, when he says you committed fraud, that's different. That makes people question things. Even loyal supporters start wondering, okay, but what if some of this is actually true? And once doubt creeps in, it spreads. We're already seeing it in focus groups and polling. Trump's favorability took a hit right after the testimony aired. Attack ads are already being cut using clips of Weisselberg's testimony. Opposition researchers are digging into every financial record they can find, looking for more evidence to pile on. This is the kind of moment that shifts narratives, that changes how people think about a political figure, and in a tight political environment, that could be devastating. And here's something else to consider. Trump's support has always been based partly on the idea that he's a successful businessman, that he's rich, that he knows how to make deals. That's a huge part of his appeal. But if Weisselberg's testimony proves that Trump's business success was built on fraud, that the wealth was inflated, that the deals were based on lies, what happens to that narrative? It collapses. And if that narrative collapses, what's left? Point number 4. Let's talk about what comes next. Because this story isn't over. Not even close. First, there's going to be more testimony. Weisselberg was just the opening act. Prosecutors have other witnesses lined up, other Trump Organization employees who might follow Weisselberg's lead and cooperate. If more people start flipping, if more insider testimony comes out, this gets exponentially worse for Trump. Second, there's the trial itself. Weisselberg's testimony was part of a larger case. That case is still ongoing. And depending on how it goes, Trump could be looking at serious legal consequences, fines, penalties, maybe even criminal charges if prosecutors decide to pursue them. Third, there's the political impact. Trump's already dealing with low approval ratings and skeptical voters. If this story stays in the headlines, if more damaging details come out, it could seriously hurt his political standing. Maybe not with his hardcore base, but with the moderates and independents. Yeah, this could be a problem. And fourth, there's the loyalty question. Because here's the thing, if Weisselberg flipped, who else might flip? Trump's whole operation was built on loyalty, on the idea that his people would never turn on him. But we've now seen that loyalty has limits. When people face prison time, when they're looking at losing everything, loyalty suddenly doesn't seem as important. So if you're someone else in Trump's orbit, someone who knows things, someone who might be facing legal trouble, you're watching Weisselberg's testimony and thinking, maybe cooperation isn't such a bad idea, and that should terrify Trump. Because the more people who cooperate, the more evidence prosecutors get, and the more evidence they get, the stronger their cases become. It's a snowball effect, and right now it's picking up speed. And let's be real for a second. Trump's facing multiple investigations right now, multiple cases, multiple prosecutors, and in each one, there are people who work with him, people who know what happened, who could potentially cooperate. If Weisselberg flipping starts a trend, if other people see that cooperation leads to reduced sentences, we could be looking at a wave of defections, and each defection brings more evidence, more testimony, more problems for Trump. Look, here's the bottom line. What happened in that courtroom on October 23rd wasn't just another legal hearing, it was a pivotal moment. The kind of moment that defines how a story gets remembered. Trump's most trusted insider, the guy who knew all his financial secrets, sat down on live television and confirmed what prosecutors have been saying all along. That's not just bad press, that's not just a legal setback. That's a betrayal at the highest level. And it happened at literally the worst possible time. The fortress is cracking. The loyalty is breaking. And Trump's facing the reality that the people who know him best, the people who were there for everything, they're not willing to protect him anymore. Not when it costs them their freedom. So what happens next? Well, that's the question everyone's asking. More testimony is coming. More evidence is going to come out. And Trump's going to have to figure out how to deal with the fact that his inner circle isn't as solid as he thought. This story is far from over. And something tells me the next chapter is going to be even wilder than this one. Because here's what we're really watching. We're watching the unraveling of Trump's empire. Not just the legal empire. Not just the business empire. But the empire of loyalty and fear that he built around himself. For years, Trump kept people in line through a combination of loyalty demands and implicit threats. Cross him and you're out. Betray him and he'll destroy you. That kept people quiet. That kept secrets buried. But now people are realizing that staying quiet might cost them more than speaking up. And once that calculation changes, once the fear of prosecution outweighs the fear of Trump, everything changes. Weisselberg is proof of that, and he won't be the last. So buckle up. Because if you think this testimony was shocking, if you think Weisselberg flipping was the biggest betrayal Trump could face, you're not thinking big enough. There are more people in Trump's orbit who know things. More people who could cooperate. More secrets that could come out. And every single one of them just watched Weisselberg get a reduced sentence for telling the truth. Every single one of them is now doing the math, weighing their options, deciding whether loyalty to Trump is worth risking their freedom. My guess? A lot of them are going to make the same choice Weisselberg made. And when they do, when more insiders start talking, this whole thing is going to blow wide open. Stay tuned. Because if you think this is as bad as it gets for Trump, you haven't been paying attention. The storm is just getting started. And based on what we've seen so far, it's going to be one hell of a ride.